Hi, everyone. I'm Alexa Ray Corriea, and this is the Game Maker's Notebook podcast. Today, I had the great pleasure of interviewing the legend herself, Briana White. You know her as the voice of Aerith in Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. We spoke of her acting background, her training. We love a good theater kid to working in games pipeline. She is a fellow theater kid. We had a great conversation about that and spoke about how to prepare and play VO characters, including the full Aerith audition story, which is really quite funny and very inspiring. She gave a lot of advice for other actors, writers, designers. I really love this conversation, so please enjoy.
It's upon us. The reunion, when worlds merge. Good, Aerith. Pray.
What happened to this place?
The world's ending. That's what everyone's saying.
Aerith! Aerith!
Cloud! No!
Cloud! 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 Aerith!
She needs you. Go.
I'm using it. You know I won't. Here we go.
Lock on me! Not on my ship.
There will be consequences.
Now, make us proud!
She'll go far.
Hey! Get a room, will ya?
Take care of Aerith for me. Fire! Cloud, bring me the black materia.
Cloud, whatever happens, I'm here for you.
No!
Briana, I am so excited to finally talk to you. I've been looking forward to this for so long. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. I had a good day today. I went on a jog this morning, which I haven't done in like a year and a half. So it felt really great. So I've got those like workout endorphins. I'm feeling good.
I am running on endorphins of excitement because I get to talk to you today.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you.
I am obviously a big fan of your work. Let's just dive right in. Acting, like how did you get here? What is your why acting? Why did you start? How did you end up here?
How did I end up here is a really big question. I will say, we'll start at the beginning, shall we? I fell in love with acting from a very young age. I would even say that before my first school play, I loved performing. There's a home video somewhere at some point, nobody knows where, of me sitting in a chair. I'm 3 years old and I'm singing along to my favorite Barney song, just holding my teddy bear, rocking in a chair. And so I've always loved performing. And then I did my first school play when I was 7 years old. It was Annie Jr. and I got cast as Molly. Jr. Have you heard the Annie? You know what Annie is?
But Annie Jr. What is the junior part?
It's adapted for kids.
Okay.
Basically. So they kind of adapt the main stage play for, they tone it down a little bit. Not that there's any adult themes they need to pull out, but they shorten it. And honestly, I don't know the details of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's adapted. So I got cast as the role of Molly, which is Annie's best friend. And I had such a great time. I fell in love with acting. And pretty much from then on, I was in every school play. I was in every summer play that I could possibly do. My parents were really, really supportive of that being my extracurricular of choice. And so that really started everything way back when. And I have not changed my mind about it since.
We love to talk about the theater kid to working in video games pipeline on this podcast.
Is that a thing?
Yes.
Okay.
I have done quite a few interviews with writers and narrative designers as well that say, oh, I started it as a theater kid. I just interviewed Allison Lurs, who's the narrative director on Destiny. And she's a former theater kid. And we talked about how theater has played into Destiny. So we love
That's
a
amazing.
good theater kid pipeline.
Are you a theater kid?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Guilty.
Just so I know who I'm talking to. Fantastic. All
Yes.
right.
Big musical theater kid. What other plays have you been in?
So let me see if I can remember all of them. Let's see. We did Molly the first year.
Okay.
Then we did, gosh, I can't remember. Maybe I know for a summer production we did The Wiz.
Oh,
I know
amazing.
we've done Music Man. We've done Oliver. We've done Beauty and the Beast. We've done, oh gosh, there were so many of them. Peter Pan, Sound of Music. I mean, so many plays. Pocahontas, yeah, a few Disney ones in there, but yeah, lots of musicals throughout my life.
So you would say, do you tend to gravitate more towards musical theater than like a Shakespeare, or have you done both?
I have not professionally performed Shakespeare. I obviously studied it a lot in school, but no, most of my like school, like elementary school through high school was all, well, actually elementary school was all musicals.
Uh-huh.
And then high school was all straight plays.
Okay.
And I did play one of the fairies in Midsummer Night's Dream.
Okay.
But I mean, very, very small part. It says like maybe like 3 lines, and I don't remember it very well. So yeah, mostly straight plays in high school, and then didn't do any official full like well-known plays in college because their strategy was, let's really break it down and do like deep scene analysis until we send you off into a big full production.
So of your theater training and background, is there anything from that you have pulled into your VO work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to a huge degree, it's very similar work as far as voice acting is a type of acting. It's a acting where you only get to use one of your tools, really, which is your voice. You don't get to use your eyes. You don't get to use your body. It's just audio only. And so I have had to adapt the tools that I've used through school, but definitely a lot to translate there for sure.
Can you dig in a little bit into the adaptations that you've had to make or tweaks that you've had to do to those processes?
Yeah. So when you're acting with your whole body, and especially this is true even for like stage acting where everything is very big because your audience is very far away and you have to project, versus TV and film acting where the camera can be super, super close up, like just on your eyes, and you have to tell a whole story in that very small box. And so your emotion has to come off a lot smaller. Otherwise, you're going to be out of the frame, right? For voice acting, it's just audio only. And so you have to be able to figure out how your emotions are going to come across just vocally. So instead of being able to talk completely monotone, but be telling a different emotional story with my face, I have to be able to give all of my emotions on the line. And how does that work? It requires a lot of playing around. But I think for me, a big portion of it was trial and error. So I would kind of sit and listen back to my own things and say, okay, how does that sound from how I remember recording it versus how it might sound to somebody else? And from the rest of it, it was really just a collaborative process while recording for Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Who were your biggest collaborators for Remake and Rebirth?
The director, Kirk Thornton, and Bob, and the audio engineers and the writers, the localization team. Because Final Fantasy VII Remake was my first big voiceover project.
Yeah.
I had taken a couple voiceover classes in college and after college, but I had never done like a big project. I'd never really done any professional work. And so to be thrown into the deep end of the pool was quite an experience.
thrown into the deep end with arguably one of the most popular and loaded video game characters of all time. And
correct.
yeah.
and one of the most technically challenging processes too.
Yeah.
It's not very, there's not a lot of freedom. You know, I hear, because this is really the only thing I've done, I hear a lot from other voice actors, you know, if you're doing other types of voice acting, they want you to bring a lot of like your own breath and your own life, and you can add in a grunt here or a sound here. But when we're recording for Final Fantasy VII Remake for the Final Fantasy stuff, it's all, we listen to the Japanese voice actors in our headphones, and then we give our version of it. And we have to match the timing super, super specifically. They give us 5 frames to go over or under.
Okay.
Truly, like it has to match exactly. So it is incredibly technically challenging to work within those limitations and feel like you're giving a creative performance. That took a lot of trial and error. And like I said, a lot of dependence on my team for the first game because I had never done it before. My only experience was playing video games and having an idea of what it maybe should sound like, and then just leaning on the team.
I do want to come back to Aerith, but I want to go back to your, you mentioned you're a big gamer. You've been streaming for a really long time.
Yeah.
What brought you to streaming? Like, obviously, theater kid to games pipeline. Like, I can see where it came in, but for you, like, what is, where did that come from? What made you want to do that?
So my mom is a gamer.
Okay.
And some of my earliest memories of her gaming, I would sit on her lap and we would play King's Quest together.
Oh,
it was one of the like early RPGs where you have to type in what your character is going to go investigate. And so she loves solving puzzles. And so, you know, puzzle solving games were really, really big for her. And so I, you know, picked that up from her. And then she bought me and my sibling an N64 so that we could play Mario Kart and so that she could play Ocarina of Time.
Amazing. Amazing.
So of course whatever time she was spending playing Ocarina of Time, you know, me and my sibling would be jumping on the couch watching her, or like, oh, can we try? And we would play the mini games and we would kind of trade the controller off. And then we would pause the game to go eat dinner. And the soundtrack of Ocarina of Time is playing in the background for like a large majority of my childhood memories. So that's kind of where the love for gaming really began.
That's so lovely. Your stream channel is Strange Rebel Gaming, and I want to know what that means. What does that title mean?
So my channel started because my love for gaming is so tied up with my love for my family. I actually started my channel called Sibling Rivalry Gaming, and it was me and my sibling. I know.
Oh my gosh.
We played together. It was a lot of fun. And then, you know, YouTube's not for everybody. They decided, you know, we're going to focus on school. And then I wanted to kind of keep the memory of SRG, of SR Gaming. And so I, you know, just word brained some words and came up with Strange Rebel Gaming. It felt like it fit because I have always felt just a little bit kind of out of the mainstream. Okay. I've always kind of felt like I'm a little bit of a rebel. I don't really take no for an answer. But it's not in like a angsty, I'm going to wreck the world kind of way. It's kind of like, in a, I want to make everything better kind of way. And this is how things should be. And I'm not going to accept less than that. And so she's a little bit of a strange rebel. She's not like a normal rebel. She's a strange rebel. So that's kind of the beginning.
I like that. And you tend to gravitate towards narrative driven, like story heavy games.
Definitely. So, and that started because while I was kind of trying to figure out what games my channel, you know, should play and what kind of people liked from my content, Uncharted 4 came out. Mm-hmm. And so I played Uncharted 4 on the channel, and that was, I had played all the other Uncharteds on my own. And so Uncharted 4 comes out, I play it on the channel, and for some reason, like that just clicked. Like people really liked watching me connect with the story. They liked to hear my character analysis from my acting background. And so that just felt like something really true to myself rather than playing, what was it at the time? Like Gary's mod, and just trying all the different modes. I don't even really know much about it, but, or like another game that came out at that time was like Metal Gear Solid 5, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it just, I feel like Uncharted 4 really just felt right for me.
Mm.
And then from there, of course, I had to play The Last of Us, which everybody recommended to me. And at the same time, I was also playing another recommended game called Life is Strange.
Yes.
And so those 3 games kind of spurred this story-based gamer. It's what people want to see from me because it's what I really connect with. I love a good story. I love characters, and I love talking about it and analyzing it and discussing why this choice could have been made and why this was so beautiful, why the scene is so impactful. It just really blends my acting background really well with gaming.
Is there a game or a character that you feel, I don't want to ask if it's your favorite because that's not quite the question, but like that you feel very strongly about, that from your background, from your training, that you feel like was done really well, that maybe doesn't get a lot of attention? Or
that doesn't get a lot of attention? Because there's a lot of really well done characters that get a lot of attention. Ooh.
What's your favorite of the ones that are like kind of more popular?
Well, I mean, you can't really talk about well done characters without talking about like Joel and Ellie from The Last of Us, right? I mean, but they get a lot of attention, rightfully so. They're really, really well done characters. Really emotional. And of course, at the time she got a lot of attention, but I don't know if people still, well, I know that there's a really dedicated fan base for her, but Chloe from Life is Strange is a really, really well done character. She's a really great representation of like what makes being a teenager so hard.
Yes, hard agree.
Right? And
Hard
and
agree.
that's really actually very hard to capture and to display in a sympathetic way, because to be honest, teenagers can be really hard to be around.
Yes. Yes, and be.
But yes, but playing as Chloe and going through kind of what she's going through, it makes you remember what it's like to be a teenager instead of looking in from the outside saying, "Oh my gosh, that's so annoying."
Yeah.
So I think that was really, really beautifully done.
I agree with you. I felt like playing Life is Strange, to wax poetic about what I feel is one of the best kind of narrative through lines in games. Just seeing real teenage girls in a video game made me so excited. I was like, this is it. We have arrived. Because when I was a teenager playing games, I was playing like Final Fantasy X too, and being like, this is my representation of teenage girls, but I can't, I'm not shooting people with guns and like flipping off of airships and stuff. So being able to see like real teenage girls in a game, for me, what I think was transformative for my career in terms of writing and the kinds of stories that I would want to pursue as a writer. So
Absolutely.
big time agree.
It's like the difference between watching a Marvel movie versus something more down to earth. Because a Marvel movie is so cool and you get to watch like what your imagination imagined you could be as a little kid, right? Like it's like your little kid imagination, and then they go boom, and then they bah, and then this happens, and then that happens, right? And then they can fly. But something more grounded and down to earth, also like it like opens your heart in a way, which is just a totally different experience.
It does. I, as someone actively playing in the Marvel sandbox right now, the thing that is amazing about those stories is they tell you, and Bill Roseman, who's in Marvel games, says this all the time. It's not a superhero story. It's a human story with superhero stakes. So it always has to be about the interpersonal relationship between the people. And then you get to fly and shoot lasers out of your eyes and all that stuff.
Yes, totally agree.
I want to dig into your training. So you went to school. You went to school for acting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to NYU.
Okay. Oh, amazing. And what were your like core areas of study? Like, what did you gravitate towards? Like, what was your big thing?
Well, I think my degree technically is called a theater degree.
Okay.
Although And I say that just because theater specifically, like being on a stage, is mostly what was taught. The way NYU Tish's acting program works is that you spend 2 years studying in a primary studio, which is to say a primary method of acting. So there's all the classic actor, Stella Adler and Strasberg, Meisner. I was in the new studio, and it was brand new. I was the first class to ever go through it.
Ooh.
And it was meant to be a blend of musical theater and straight acting, which was perfect for me, because I got to do acting at my core with just like a little bit of dance and a little bit of singing, which is exactly perfect for me because I'm not a super talented dancer or singer, but I love doing it. But I don't have that like natural talent for it. But acting was really the core. And so they wanted to have musical theater actors that were working with like real acting. And instead of, I think the idea was like, if you go into a musical theater studio, you're more of a singer or a dancer and you lose some of that like pure acting training. And so they kind of like blended two ideas and put it together. And I had a really great a really great time. I loved my primary studio, but then I switched into Stone Street Studio for my last year. And that is a TV and film specific acting studio.
Okay.
So I think it's called a theater degree, but I didn't just study theater. That's why I say it like that. Yeah.
What is the, because again, I don't have a frame of reference for types of acting. So what for you, moving from theater to TV and film, like what are the differences there?
I had been acting for almost all of my life. And I felt like when I went into NYU's like theater program, I felt like they were always trying to really craft a performance. And that's great, but it didn't feel like acting to me.
Okay.
Because to me, acting had always just been becoming.
Okay.
Instead of layering on top of what I am, I just prefer to kind of like crack that open and change who I am. So that has always been kind of my just natural, like as I grew up, this is what I've always done, and not through any sort of like official training. That's just what acting was to me since I was little. And crafting a really, really, I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes it felt a little contrived.
Okay. Yeah, that's understandable.
For the theater aspect of it. Whereas in TV and film, just not on purpose, but just by design, TV and film doesn't have time for you to rehearse 2 months straight before you get on set. You have to just do it. Mm-hmm. If you book it, you have to show up and you have to do it. And very, very rarely in TV and film is there rehearsals. And I don't actually know much how it is for the games industry, at least for Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth and Crisis Core. They really just called me in. We would do our 3 takes. If we needed that line another way, we would continue doing it until we got the line. But there was no like, here's the script. Why don't you write a 32-page journal as your character and then come in and we'll rehearse and then you can go home and then we come back a month later. There was none of that, right?
Yeah.
So I just think for my style, for the way that worked for me, TV and film kind of drew me that direction unintentionally.
Yeah, for games, largely the projects that I've worked on have been similar to your experience on Rebirth. Here, you come in, here's the script. Today we're doing this, and tomorrow we will do this. And if you're motion capturing, then you put on the little suit with the balls all over you, and you run around in a warehouse for a couple hours. Yep. Which is how both of them are fun for very different reasons. So you seem to
I really want to do a motion capture project. That's like next on my vision board. I really want the chance to do that.
They're fun. They're a lot of fun too. I haven't done one, but I obviously as a writer watched a couple and I do love watching like I will never forget. I worked on the 2021 Call of Duty, and we had Laura Bailey in that, and watching Laura like just do barrel rolls over and over and over, like popping up for like an hour was just so fun to watch. So you tend to gravitate towards projects that are just you become this new character, you jump in and kind of like not trial by fire, but you really like to just get in and get your hands dirty immediately.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
It's almost like cold reading. I mean, as an actor, they teach you how to cold read if you were to go in for an audition. But I really just find that, and that's not to say that if I was to rehearse a character, I couldn't, that wouldn't change the character over time. But I find it's just, I just want it to be natural.
Yeah.
You know, I just want it to, I don't want to say, you know, I think this character has an accent because I think that would be fun. That's not where I want to come from. You know, I read the script and I just sort of feel out how the character might sound, how the character might move. I mean, it was the same thing with Aerith, right? Like when I got the audition, I knew who I was auditioning for, and I read the audition lines, and I just sat in front of my microphone and gave it a few tries. And then, of course, I listened to the Japanese reference and to her previous voice actors, you know, read her story, and it just kind of like filters through some kind of informational sieve that I must have in my brain. And just, I try a few things out and see how it goes. But it doesn't feel like I'm like sitting down, like building a sandcastle of what this character is. I don't know how to describe it any differently, you know?
Yeah. I know you've done a few interviews where you've talked about auditioning for Aerith, but I want the like full on nitty gritty, like moment to moment story of your process in coming to her and finding her. So you said that you knew who you were auditioning for. Was that like the first audition? How did that happen? Did you get a call? Did you put in? Like, what was that like? What was that like?
Well,
I want the whole story.
If you want the nitty gritty,
I do.
So I got an email in my inbox for a project. I believe it was codenamed at the time. And I believe they weren't saying the characters' names.
Okay.
But I get an email, you know, there's this video game project. It's going to be a pretty big one. So if you're interested in auditioning, let us know. But the email was written to somebody else.
Oh. What? Okay.
My email had somebody else's name on it. And so I'm reading this and I'm like, I don't know if this is meant for me, but it would be so cool if I could audition because I'm pretty sure I know what it's for. And so I send an email back to my agent and I say exactly that. I'd love to audition, even though this was not meant for me. And he goes, oh, yeah, you can audition. And I'm like, great. He's like, I did mean to send that to you, but the original like outreach email was for some other girl. And I was like, okay, totally fine. But yeah, I'm going to audition. Great. I'm not going to overthink this. I'm not going to, you know, look a gift horse in the mouth. And so we scheduled the audition and I was sent the audition materials. And I actually was offered to audition for both Tifa and Aerith.
Ooh.
And so I worked on both of those auditions simultaneously. And, you know, I started researching. And I was only, I believe, given pictures of the characters. So I, as a gamer, was able to know who these people were. Mm-hmm. But they didn't say who these people were. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting, right? As soon as I realized what's happening. But I'm also knowing that like these characters have been voiced by like very famous actors. I immediately am like, okay, I will never book this. They're obviously going to go with someone famous. But my first voiceover audition, and it's like something really, really cool. How exciting. Like, let's just have fun with it. Because the NDA said I could never talk about it if I didn't book it. So I said, I'm never going to be able to talk about it. So I might as well just have like the time of my life and have fun with it because this is never going to amount to anything. So I prep both auditions and it's listening to the Japanese references, listening to their previous voice actors, reading the characters' backstories, reading the story of FF7, watching a few YouTube videos, watching a little bit of Advent Children. But I believe I didn't have that much time to prep. And then before that, as I was saying, I sat at my desk, just read the audition lines and then listened back and then said, it needs a little bit more of like, Maaya Sakamoto has this amazing, she's the voice actress for Aerith and has been since the beginning.
Mm-hmm. She
has this beautiful way of just sounding so, the word I use is silky. Like it has a texture. Her voice has a texture that feels like silk. And so I figured, could I add a little bit more breath into the lines to achieve that sound? And that's what I went with for Aerith. And immediately I know, she has to be a character that you fall in love with from the very beginning. Both of these characters have to be characters that you immediately fall in love with, because that's part of the game process, right? You have to fall in love with these characters in order for it to be a game worth playing. So I just recorded and listened back and recorded, listened back until I felt like I can't do this anymore. And then I went into the audition.
Did you that the one? Like, did you have the one audition?
There was just one audition.
Wow. Okay.
And I recorded both Tifa and Aerith, and Aerith very much felt natural to me. The sound that I had crafted for her really felt natural to me, really wasn't too hard to pull out. Tifa, they wanted me to try to pitch her a little bit lower to like kind of differentiate them, to see if that would be workable. But that was a little bit harder for me personally, to pitch her down and still be able to access the emotion, because ultimately the emotion is number one and then everything else comes second. So how it sounds, what the pitch is, like the melody of the voice, like do you end your lines on an up note or a down note, trying to avoid vocal fry, like your diction, all of that's important, but it comes second to emotion. And so for Tifa, I just didn't have it. And I remember I left the audition, and the casting director, we were just kind of chatting, and she said, so, I mean, who do you think? Who would you want, if you had to pick right now? And I couldn't answer because I didn't want to tell her the wrong thing and then not book it. And so I was like, this is a trap. I like them both for different reasons. But in my heart, I knew Aerith was a lot easier for me. And I loved how playful she is. I mean, the lines that I was given to audition was the very first scene where Aerith meets Cloud, and it's in the script. Cloud, Aerith says, would you like to buy a flower? And Cloud says, ugh, how much? And Aerith goes, 5 gil, right? And then Cloud says, okay, fine, 5 gil. And she goes, oh, you're trying to get rid of me, right? So she's immediately like poking at him from the very beginning. And I just love that about her. I really leaned into that. And I think that might be what they liked about it. I didn't hear for a long time.
Oh dear.
It was such a long time. I thought, well, that's the end of that. I might as well put that out of my head. And then I heard, I got an email, and I was like, this is insane.
I can't imagine opening, like, what was it like, okay, what were you doing? Like when you opened that email and you saw it, like, I'm
pretty sure I was like sitting on the couch, drinking my coffee, like petting my dog.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure it was like in the morning. And I was just kind of like starting my day, checking my phone, got the email, and just like the world stopped spinning.
I love that.
Because I didn't think that I would ever book this. I mean, my expectations were truly that I would never book it and I would never talk about it, because this was my first voiceover role. I have no business being in that booth. Truly. I mean, that's continually how I felt. I had no experience, and they were willing to work with me. And I cannot thank them enough for that.
I love this. So typically when we record, the actors are not all in the booth together. Sometimes we'll have them in separate rooms. Sometimes it's just you doing all of your lines in a vacuum. Did you do any chemistry reads with any of the other characters, or was it just you?
No chemistry reads.
because you have a lot of chemistry. We can hear it as you guys are all speaking, which is incredible.
Thank you. And I have to say, there is almost, I didn't work with anybody. I mean, when I get called into the booth, they have a break before me, so the previous actor has left, and they have a break after me, so the next actor isn't there. So it's just me, the director, the audio engineer, and sometimes the writer. Sometimes the writer is calling in from Japan, but sometimes they're here. So it's just, that's it. It's just the four of us, and I didn't interact with any of the other actors during the process at all. There was one chance I got to meet Cody, John, and Erica at the E3 press conference where the cast list was released. And then that was it until the game came out.
That's wild.
It is wild.
Oh my gosh.
And I would have to say that made it extra special whenever like we would get to hear the other voice actor in our headphones. So for the most part, we see our script and we give our lines. And if we need more emotion, different timing, whatever we need, we give it more takes until the director and the writer feel like we have it. Or sometimes they'll take, half of line A and half of line B, and they'll kind of Halloween Frankenstein something together because the audio engineers are absolute magicians. But on the occasion when they actually have access to the previous actor's line, so like if I'm responding to Cloud saying, you're trying to get rid of me for 5 gil, right? Sometimes they'll be able to play him in my headphones saying, how much? Not always. It's a very special treat. I would say maybe only a handful of times throughout the entire recording process. But oftentimes we'll pull it up if like we need to know how far a line has to be projected, or whether or not the person is joking with us. Sometimes we need that context and we want to hear that back. Or a lot of times, especially in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Tifa and I say a line at the same time.
Yes.
But we don't want it to sound in stereo. We don't want it to sound like we're echoing each other. And so they'll have to pull hers up. Or if I recorded first they'll pull mine up for Britt. And then Britt will be able to say the same line, but without making it sound like we're speaking in tandem.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't realize you guys hadn't met each other beforehand. That's crazy. Did you, when you were recording, because sometimes you get a script and sometimes you get an Excel sheet with a bunch of lines in a vacuum. Did you have the full script in front of you, or you had the Excel sheet of death?
We had the Excel sheet of death the entire time. The entire time.
Gosh.
And like I'm a gamer, and I was just, for the first time being on the other side of the video gaming process, getting to see how the sausage is made. Although that's a bad metaphor because you don't want to see how the sausage is made, but I was desperate to see how video games were made. I was just truly, I was like skipping into the booth when I first started. Like I was so excited to just feel like I was a part of it. And so when they give me the Excel spreadsheet, sometimes it would just be my lines, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And if we needed context, the writer would give it to us. But sometimes I would be able to see like the lines before and the lines after, and they would kind of scroll through looking for where we were going to start that day. And I would just be reading at like as quick as I could. I would just be reading everything, just consuming as much of the script as I could, because I was like so excited to like see where the story was going and see what was happening with these characters and just get as much as I could. Like I just wanted to absorb it all. It was so fun. So sometimes I would get more than my lines, but not always.
So then when you went in for Remake and then for Rebirth, did they give you a story treatment? Like, did you know where your character was going and what your emotional arc was? Or was it just piece by piece as time went on?
I don't get anything in advance.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
Everything is completely in the moment. I mean, even the very first few recording sessions, I was giving a read that was very soft and feminine and, very flower girl. But that first session, the writers called me into the other side of the booth, and I was like, yeah, I just feel like this character is, she's a girly girl. And they said, oh, no, no, no. No, she's not a girly girl at all. She had a very tough childhood and she grew up in the slums. Like she is feminine, but she is tough as nails. And she wears that with her playfulness and sassiness on her exterior. And so that was when I was given like the direction of where we were going, because she's not like that in Advent Children, right? For obvious reasons, because she's at a different point in the story. But for this point in the story, they had to give me that so that we could just get started. And then I didn't get anything else other than, okay, for this line, here's what you need to know. For this line, here's what you need to know. And I, to this day, haven't gotten any more direction on where Aerith's character is going.
That's wild to me, because I feel like I've been a lifetime Final Fantasy fan. I went back and saw Advent Children in theaters when it re-released earlier this year, kind of a little bit of a nerd about it. But you can feel all of you in your performances, the arcs that are happening. So that's incredible to me that you were given piece by piece context. That's really quite extraordinary.
Yeah. And we've just had to do our best with being able to walk in the room and perform.
Yeah.
Right away.
Did you mentioned you went and you watched parts of Advent Children. She is at a different point in the story. In Advent Children, by the time Advent Children came out, Aerith as a character was this mystical figure, not only in Final Fantasy VII, but in the Final Fantasy franchise. She is this kind of elevated legendary character, but that also comes with loads of baggage. And you said that you listened to, I think Mandy Moore played her in Kingdom Hearts.
Correct. Yes.
And another famous actress played her in the English dub of Advent Children.
And you kind of,
gosh, wow. Whoa, what a.
So you see why I thought I would never book this role.
Well, there's a lot of like, again, that baggage, but also you mentioned, the Japanese voice actor, and you wanted to emulate her. So in looking at this breadth of her and all of this baggage, was there any part of your approach to her? Like, how much of that baggage did you keep? How much did you toss? Like, what was that feeling when you were honing in on her voice?
I mean, truly, it was a very collaborative process. Like, I knew from the get-go, because I was told this, that the Japanese reference was the number one in importance. So every single line, I listen to the way Maaya Sakamoto says it first. And then we give our version of that performance as close as we can, when we can, and when we should. And that's up to like the directors and writers, the team. Localization is a very difficult and specific process.
Yes.
So some lines that make total sense in Japanese would not make any sense at all in English. And so that's all part of the creative process of like, how does something get transformed? It's very trial and error. The writers will give us the version of what they think it should be in English. We give it a few tries. Sometimes brilliant, we move on. Sometimes that didn't work. And so they have to go back and rework it some more. And then we come back to it a few months later. So it's all extremely collaborative. And that's true for the voice as well. So I know that the Japanese reference is number one. We do that as best we can. But as far as like her character and where she is in the story at that point, that all came down to that one conversation in the booth. Like, she has had a tough childhood. She's grown up in the slums. She's going to curse in Final Fantasy VII Remake, that those kind of things. I had to be told by the team.
Yeah. So what was that collaboration process like with the writers and the teams you were talking to? Obviously, as a writer, I love seeing what my actors in the booth bring to my character. And sometimes that informs rework and stuff like that. So what has your process been like with writers?
So that's a really interesting point. I would say for Final Fantasy VII, each game has been completely a different process
Wow.
for me
Okay.
personally. So for Final Fantasy VII Remake, the first one, obviously I went in, I had no idea what I was doing. And I literally told them, I said, I am leaning very heavily on you for this. And I would give them, and I was so nervous and I felt so out of my element. I mean, in the booth, I was literally like, I held my hands like this and I just did my best performance. And I was incredibly, I feel personally very stiff. And I'm glad that that didn't translate in the performance because, like I said, my team's very good. And they said, hey, let's do it 3 more times. Let's do it this way. Can we try that? And it was able to kind of get a good performance out of me, even though I had no clue how it was going to all come together. It was way too much for me to deal with. And I was very nervous. For Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, which was the next game that I was reprising my role as Aerith, she is younger and she is more naive and much softer. And so that was a really fun challenge for me as an actor. But because we were using the literal script from the original, it wasn't as free. So we didn't get a chance to play around with things as much. It was not quite a remake, not quite a remaster. It was something in between, right? But definitely not as free of a process. For Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, though, we got that freedom back, and I had a level of confidence in my abilities. And so I was able to discover much more about what I can bring to Aerith's character than I was in the previous titles. I was able to feel a lot more free. I was able to say, if I gave a line reading that I didn't like, I would speak up this time and say, actually, I really didn't like that one. Can we go again? Or if I gave them an A, B, and C, I would be able to say, please don't pick B. Of course, they could always override me, but I would be like, please, not me. I could input my opinions a lot more than I felt comfortable doing in Remake. And so for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I was able to discover my artistry and my creativity and my voice. And so Final Fantasy VII Rebirth holds such a special place in my heart for that performance because I feel like that was much more, I had my hands in it.
Yeah.
It was for me. It was much more free and it was more play.
More play. When you are doing, so the experience for games where you have the situational context, spreadsheet of death, for TV and film, is it the same where like if you're shooting an episode, you get the context of the episode, or do you get like the whole season arc, the whole plan for your character far in advance? Like what is the level of information, the depth of information you get for TV and film versus what you've gotten on games?
For TV and film, you almost always get the script in advance. Not very far in advance, especially for TV, because sometimes you'll show up and they'll hand you the blue version of the script instead of the green version of the script, right? Do you not know that?
I do, but you can explain for listeners who.
Sure. So when you get the script, because TV is so fast paced, oftentimes they'll have to write edits like the night before. So you'll show up on set that day and you will have your script in your hand and they'll have different colors of pages for you to switch out so that you have the updated version of the script, and they're different colors so that you know for sure that you have the updated version of the script. And so changes have to be made completely on the fly. Like it really does feel like a cold read sometimes when you're on set for TV. But you still have the ideas of who your character is, where they're going to be at the beginning of this episode and at the end of this episode.
Okay.
For film, especially, you get the entire script of the film. And so you get to see where your character is going to be for the entirety of the project. And oftentimes, if you are working with a director who is very actor centric, you get to actually talk with the director and say, hey, this is, how I see this playing out. And here are the references that I feel like other characters that might be similar to this character. Here's inspirations that we could pull from. Not always, but that's a really fun part of the process if you get to be a part of it. but it's totally opposite for video games.
Mm.
At least for the one that I've been on. The 3 that I've been on, it's nothing. For me, I've gotten absolutely nothing. But TV and film, totally, I wouldn't say totally different. It's almost like in all of the like acting projects that I've talked about, there's like theater where you get the most, like TV and film where you get a little bit more mediums, like Goldilocks, and then video games, very, very, very top secret.
Yeah. Games industry definitely has like a secrecy. I'm going to call it a problem. I feel like we tend to obfuscate a lot, and it can result in some miscommunication or not quite getting what we want. So I'm team, let's be a little more, let's tell everyone what is going on
Trust
here.
our NDAs.
Yes, maybe like loosen them up a little bit.
So at least for the remake projects, I completely understand why they do it that way, especially because for the remake series, which we now know is a trilogy, there's 3 games. I started this process 5 years ago. From a development standpoint, they probably didn't know and couldn't tell me much more than I was given. So, I mean, there's a lot of hands for a piece of information, and how many hands and minds and computers it has to pass through before it gets down to me. And so only giving me what I need to know is just sometimes a organizational benefit, which I completely understand. And, you know, things definitely change a lot through the development process too. So I completely understand why they're super secretive, but it definitely makes it a technical challenge when it comes to how do I give a performance that people want, that this character deserves.
Yeah. And
everybody on the dev team is part of that goal of how do we give a performance that people will love.
Yeah. How have you, so you've done these 3 games. I can't play anything that I've written on because I want to hide in a hole and I don't want to look at it. As a writer, and I know a bunch of us have this problem, we feel like we could just iterate and change everything to death. So when you're recording, when you are filming, when you're putting yourself out there doing multiple takes, how do you let go of the work you've already done and not like critique yourself to death? Like, how do you look at something and be like, yes, this is it, moving on to the next line or moving on to the next project? Like, what's that like for you?
I'm actually pretty good about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just because I've been very lucky that the project that I've worked on is very dedicated towards quality. And so I wasn't sure how the first game would come out. And honestly, I wasn't even sure how Crisis Core Reunion would be received. But once I got started on Rebirth, I had a level of trust from working with this team and knowing how much they're going to put in the work to make sure that a quality product comes out. And I could trust in that. And so when we're in the booth, of course, I was playing and I was having fun and I was being a part of the creative process a lot more. But I tried not to critique too much because I knew that if something wasn't right, would we do it again? And if we didn't do it again, it was right. When I play these games back, of course, there might be a couple little lines where I'm like, I would have done that a little bit different. And because I'm streaming them, I actually get to say that. So when I stream the games, I hear a line. I just did it on my previous stream. I hear a line and I go, ooh, if I could do that one over, I would. But not every game or not every line is of paramount importance, right? Not that lines can be throwaways, for example, but not every line needs to be reiterated to death. And so from that perspective, I'm usually, it just makes it more fun, you know, for me to play and be a part of, because when other people play the game, they don't notice these things.
No.
They don't. It's only if you were a part of making it do you go, actually, I don't love that. But you know, that's part of it. That's part of the joy of being on this side of the making process.
Yes, that is true.
Right?
that is something I think a lot of us, including myself, would do to remember. No one is noticing it but me.
Exactly.
How do you take care of your voice? How do you make sure, because that's the moneymaker, that's the thing that you're exercising. And I feel like a lot of people who are not trained actors, trained singers, don't kind of understand that this requires maintenance as well. So for you, how do you take care of yourself to make sure that stays in tip-top shape? I read an interview for you where you said that you gave up drinking when you booked this role. Like, yeah.
Actually, I gave up drinking before I booked it.
Okay.
Because I really, really wanted to book it.
Yeah.
And so I actually made a little deal with the universe and I said, okay, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to prepare as if I've booked this role and then we'll see what happens. And I'm telling you, like, a really long time went by. And I was like, well, I guess I didn't book it. I guess I'll just start drinking again. And then I booked it and then I quit drinking again. Yeah. So, I mean, when you're in theater school, a lot of that knowledge comes down to you from, teachers saying, hey, if you want to be in theater, you're going to be performing 8 times a week for 3 hours in a row. You need to be physically extremely well. You need to take very good care of your instrument. That includes, don't be up late the night before. That includes, cut back on drinking. That includes, don't smoke. There are things that you have to do if you want to be a performer, to take care of what you're doing. And it's so funny to me because I think about like all the like Hollywood actors that have like drug problems.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine. Like I'm like, if for a while there, when I was drinking, I was getting 3-day hangovers. Like,
yeah.
The constant battle to stay hydrated is enough for me. Like, I don't know how some people do it, but it was taught to me very early on, like, take good care of your instrument. So so for voice acting, I don't drink anymore. I've never smoked. But I try to stay, physically fit. Like, I try to go on jogs and walk a lot, because you never know, like, when you go into the booth, you have 4 hours. You don't know if you're going to be screaming the entire session or doing battle grunts. Like, sometimes it takes a lot of stamina. Like you said, Laura Bailey doing barrel rolls and then popping up for an hour straight. Like, you have to be very physically fit, or at least have like some level of stamina. But on top of that, there's even more nitty gritty when it comes to like on the day of, and all of that I had to figure out trial and error because everybody is different. While recording for Remake, I tried everything. I tried hot tea with lemon, hot tea with honey, hot tea with lemon and honey. I tried always having like Kleenex on deck in case I need to blow my nose. There's a classic voice actor trick of eating a green apple before a session to make sure that you don't have mouth smacky sounds. Yes.
Ooh.
If you eat a green apple, it should clear your mouth smacks. But for me, I found that dairy did that the most. So I never have dairy before a voice recording session, and I never have sugar. I can have like natural sugar from certain fruits, but I have to avoid like banana because banana is like very textural and makes me smacky. I can't have, I mean, truly, like, all of this was entirely trial and error of, today in the recording booth, I'm having a lot of like vocal knocks at the back of my throat on my lines because it's the sound that your tongue makes when it disconnects from the back of my soft palate, and it makes a sound. But it's happening on lines. Like, I think I have trouble with saying the word most, or like sometimes there are certain words that'll trigger it. And so I found that if I stayed really hydrated, but also if I took a Claritin, sometimes that would clear up my throat. And so for most of, I don't think I've ever said this, but for most of the Remake recording process and a lot of Rebirth too, I took a Claritin like the day before recording.
Wow.
So, the day of recording, so that I would be able to give clean audio.
They should sponsor you.
Hey, Claritin, give me a call. I'm available.
That's amazing. I had no idea it was like down to the foods you were eating.
Yes, but it's different for everybody. I'm sure there are some professional voice actors who don't need to worry about all that because they're amazing. Like if you've ever heard Erica Lindbeck in the booth, I'm sure she doesn't need to do all that. But for me, I'm still learning. Like, this was my first thing, and I just have apparently a very like clicky soft palate. So I don't know, everybody's different. But I also have to have like hot tea or hot water or hot tea, just one hot liquid, but also a room temperature liquid, because if I have mouth smacky sounds, I have to use room temperature liquid to like clear the front of my mouth, but the hot tea soothes the back of my throat. I mean, it gets so incredibly detailed because these mics pick up everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And of course, everybody jokes about, and I joke about it too, like, oh, it'll pick up like my stomach grumbling if I'm hungry, which is true.
Oh my gosh.
And it's hilarious because the audio engineer will like record it, play it back, and be like, oh, is there a monster in the booth with you, Briana?
Oh my gosh.
Which is
Cute.
funny. Yes, very cute. But the mics are even more sensitive. Like, they'll pick up tiny little like crispy sounds from your lips if you're dehydrated, or like knocks from the tongue disconnecting from your soft palate. And so me having to record for Remake on a completely like super tight schedule, first voiceover project, legendary character pressure, and all of this like nitty gritty technical stuff was so challenging, to the point where I had total imposter syndrome. I thought I was going to get fired every day I went in.
No.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I would like sit in my car crying because I felt like I don't belong here. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is just so hard. They got the wrong girl. I was convinced.
No, never.
I was convinced because it was so hard. It was so challenging. And that's why, like, that was the entire process for Remake. That's why for Rebirth, I felt so much freer.
Yeah.
Because I knew these things already. I knew my body a lot more. I knew it was going to be a good product no matter what. And I could just act. I didn't have to focus on all of the extra stuff. I could just act.
Yeah. Did you, when that kind of imposter syndrome or confidence kind of wanes for you, how do you tackle that? Like, what are your tools for kind of getting past that?
So it was honestly, and I don't necessarily recommend this for everybody, but for me, it was very tough love.
Yeah.
So when I first booked the role, and I think like very soon after like the first trailer came out, I actually got a tattoo of Aerith's flower on my ankle, because just being, I was saying, look, they might recast me, I might get fired, but just being this much a part of the process has changed my life so much already. I'm going to get the tattoo. I know I'm not going to regret it. So I got the tattoo. And then while I was in those like very dark imposter syndrome times, like they definitely got the wrong girl, I was sitting cross-legged and I saw my tattoo. And I was like, I can envision it so clearly in my head. Just a voice came through that was like, oh, well, they got the wrong girl. Oh, well, you are the only English voice of Aerith that they're going to get. So you better buck up. And I said to myself, like, you are feeling so insecure right now, but this game and this character means so much more than your insecurity. This character is so important to people. You don't matter in the face of that. Like, your insecurity means nothing. You get over it. Get your shit together and go in the booth and do your best. And that's all you can do.
Yeah.
So I didn't even really like quite defeat my imposter syndrome so much as I just like shoved it in a corner and said, it's not important. Yeah. Because I could go into the booth and feel happy and give the performance that I'm going to give, or I can go into the booth and feel miserable and still give the performance that I'm going to give. So I might as well just like get over it, you know?
Yeah, that's great advice, actually.
Okay.
No, it is.
It feels kind of mean, but
no, like I think there's something very powerful in saying, oh, well, they picked me. I got to do it. I just have to do it. There's something very empowering in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, I being sad about it wasn't going to change anything.
Yeah.
So.
And you crushed it. So like,
thank you.
Here we are. Here we are.
Like you asked me at the beginning, like, how did we get here? And honestly, I don't know. I still don't know. What are we doing here? How did we get here?
I don't think any of us, I have actually had a variation of this conversation with almost everyone that I've interviewed. We don't really know how we got here, but we're here and we're going to do it, you know?
Yes, exactly.
We're here now and it's everyone's problem, basically.
Precisely.
Yes. Everyone's problem to deal with.
Deal with it.
So from an actor's perspective, now you've had these amazing games under your belt, this really high profile character under your belt. From an actor's perspective for you, and also with your streaming and all of the games that you've played for you, what makes a good, compelling, memorable game character? If you could tell, the writers, the designers, the people who are listening, the developer hopefuls who listen to this podcast, if you could tell them, this is what, from my perspective, as someone who's going to be reading your lines, who's going to be performing your characters, what makes a good character? What makes an excellent character?
A character that, it's tough. I would say what makes a great character is a character you can see yourself in.
Okay.
Any character that reflects a part of you is going to work its way into your heart. And if a character can work its way into your heart, you're going to remember it.
Mm.
That's going to leave a lasting impression. And it might change you. I think any character that you love so much that works its way into your heart and changes you in some way, that's a really great character.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard so many stories about how Aerith has reminded people over and over again to, yes, things can be dark, things can be serious, but you can still be playful.
Mm-hmm.
You can still have fun. You can still think about light and happiness and friendship, even when you don't think you're going to make it out on the other side.
Absolutely.
And I think any character that's going through incredibly difficult circumstances, like us, like you yourself, and manages to remind you that you can push forward too, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a great character. That's a character worth writing, worth acting, because that means you've made something that changed someone. And that makes all of the hard stuff worth it. All of the overbearing NDAs and all of the like crazy schedules and all of the self-doubt, all of the rewrites and all of the crazy things that we see online and have to deal with.
Oof.
It all becomes worth it when you realize that you maybe changed someone for the better.
Yeah.
Something you created.
I think that, again, great advice. I feel, again, from developer perspective, with the crazy things we see online and things that are happening, we can very easily lose sight of who we're making this for. And it is for people to see and reflect and identify and have a little bit of escapism during the hell times, but also to remind them of what they're fighting for too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So last question, still kind of introspective, but now we're going to look forward. So for you, like what kind of character do you want to play next? What would you love to play next? What are you thinking about? What kind of challenges do you want to try? I know you talked about wanting to have a mocap role.
Yes. Oh, a mocap role would be so fun. But thematically, I love a really juicy villain.
Okay.
I love a villain that makes you think, oh, maybe I could be a villain too, because what she's saying makes sense. I love a villain with like great motivation that's totally relatable and with a backstory that people can identify with. That's also so evil, you just love to hate them.
Yeah.
I love a juicy villain. And if I could go from playing Aerith to a villain, I'd be done forever. I'd be set.
Oh my
I'd be
gosh.
set.
Aerith to Sephiroth.
Yes. Talk
Female
about
Sephiroth.
relatable villains that you understand, that you love to hate. Like Sephiroth is a juicy villain. If I could play a version of that. And hey, I'm already halfway to the hair, right?
Yes.
I'm pretty close. I need to grow a few more years out, but
I know there's a lot of devs listening to this, so you heard it here. We've got your next villain right here.
Yes. Give me a call.
Thank you so much for being so real with me and so open and so honest and talking about the trials and tribulations of bringing Aerith to life in your career. I appreciate it so much.
Of course. Like same with what makes a great character. I feel like that's what makes doing these podcasts worth it for me, is if somebody else out there can hear that I didn't think I was the right person for the role, but I went in and did my best anyway, and look how it turned out. Everybody goes through imposter syndrome and tough times and feeling like you're not worth it and you don't belong. But you get through it on the other side and it's always better. So I love doing this podcast. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inspiring these questions and asking these questions to inspire these answers. Truly, I just love doing these.
Awesome. You're the best.
Sharing the story.
Thank
you. That's really sweet.
Thank you.
You're the best.
No, you're the best.
No, you are the best. And I did hear that from Ben Starr. So
oh gosh, I was wondering when he was going to come up. Thanks, Ben. And thank you.
Yes.